You're listening to Bold Hearts, Big Moves, the show for female entrepreneurs who want it all: a thriving business, deep self love, and fulfilling relationships. I'm Erin Anderson, and each week we will dive into how to set stronger boundaries, make empowered choices, and show up in life and business with boldness, authenticity, and heart. Because let's be real, the money you make is directly related to the love that you have for yourself and the strength of your relationships. So if you're ready to lead with love and make those big moves with those bold hearts, let's dive in.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Bold Hearts, Big Moves. Today we're talking about the value of vulnerability. If you've been in business for a little bit, especially as the female entrepreneur, this is kind of something we get talked to a lot about and possibly even talk a lot about ourselves. But if I'm going to be totally honest, it's also something that I see a lot of female entrepreneurs struggling with. A lot. And the thing about being vulnerable that is really wonderful is it invites that collaboration, it invites the team, it invites the tribe, and it invites more power to the female entrepreneur. And so I really wanted to discuss this today and talk about what is vulnerability and why is that powerful in your business. So let me just tell you first and foremost, vulnerability, it connects you to clients. It creates sales. It builds, like I said, the supportive relationship because it is the connection point, right? Vulnerability is the basis for us to be able to connect to our audience. If somebody can't connect to us, they're not going to buy from us, because remember that people buy from those that they know, like, and trust, right? That's how sales work. And so vulnerability has to be key there in order for sales to come to you, because people can really see what's there. They're not looking for a show. They're not looking for a persona. They're not looking for someone who isn't being real and authentic with them. They're looking for authenticity. They're looking for vulnerability. They're looking for someone who's willing to walk their talk. And that is what vulnerability does. It doesn't make you invincible. Like, nobody really wants to talk to somebody that's invincible. They want to talk to somebody who's human, who's had struggles, but has triumphed through those struggles. So this is why vulnerability is really, really powerful. And so, but I get it. Like, some of the things that might come up if you yourself are feeling vulnerable, and if you yourself are possibly even afraid to be vulnerable with your audience, you might be wondering if that's something that could be perceived as weak, or like maybe you're worried about oversharing the details, or balancing, being real and professional at the same time, right? Like, how do you do it all? And it comes down to, number one, valuing yourself first, right? If if you don't value yourself, it definitely comes out in your messaging. To give you an example, you know, I I know my son has a little friend who just got asked to prom, and the kid that asked her was not confident. And it was they tried to ask her as cute as possible, and but the messaging was so like, you don't have to say yes, but I would really love to go with you. Like, you could tell, like, this kid has like a massive crush on her, but he's just not confident that he's good enough, right? And that came through in the messaging. Now, granted, the girl is a sweetheart and she totally said yes. And, they're going to go to the prom as a big group and they're going to have a ton of fun. But messaging is key, right? When we're confident in our vulnerability, our messaging comes out very different. However, when we're not confident, when we feel less than, that also comes through big time in the messaging, and that's when we tend to overshare because we're trying to like put out fires in the message, and that's not something that our clients want to hear, right? That confuses them and they're like, "Ooh, okay, if she doesn't trust herself, then there's no way I can trust her." And so I really want to talk about like Christ for just a second and his vulnerability, right? Now, here's a guy that's perfect, never made a mistake in his life. But one of the most vulnerable times, I think, to him was when in the New Testament he's going through, he's preaching in all these different places, and the apostles are following him. And these people come in and tell him, "We'll make you king if you take away our daily loads of work." And Christ, of course, is wise, and he's like, "No, if I took away your work, I would take away your ability to find yourself, your confidence, your ability to like yourself. Like, there's no way I'm going to do that, right?" And now, of course, he didn't say those exact words, but he said no, and the people went away disappointed, murmuring, angry that he wouldn't do it. And then comes the most vulnerable moment. Like, I can really feel the Savior in this moment when he looks at Peter and he says, "Will you leave me too?" Like, my heart broke for him right then, right? Like, I can connect to that fear. I can connect to that fear of abandonment that I loved them and they left me, right? Like, we can connect to that. But the Savior talks about how even in that vulnerable moment, like, well, he doesn't talk about it, but the story goes on in the scripture that even in that vulnerable moment, after the vulnerable moment, he still stays true to himself. And I think that that's the key to vulnerability, to know that we can have moments of emotion, moments of even weakness or struggle or pain or, but we're still going to be the ones that come out on top because we believe it. We believe in ourselves. We're moving forward. We're going for it, right? And that's what was so amazing about Christ in his vulnerability is he never let the vulnerable moments say anything different about him than what he already knew about himself, right? The thing that's amazing too is because of the sharing of his story, right? To me, because I connected to that, it built his credibility, it built his authority in my life, right? Because it didn't stop him. It didn't make him reverse. It didn't make him, maybe it made him doubt for a minute, but then he killed it and he was right back on par, right? Like, he stayed true to his mission. He stayed true to who he was and gained many, many followers because he was real. He was so real. And I think a lot of people really appreciated that about him because that reality was truth. And that truth led them to say, "Well, if he can do it this way, let me try it and see what happens." And they too saw results, right? What a beautiful, wonderful thing. And so when we're vulnerable ourselves, it builds us also credibility. It builds us authority and it helps us be seen because and it takes off the persona of someone that is perfect because, oh heavens, we're not. And again, like I said, nobody wants to buy from someone who's perfect. They want to buy from somebody who gets them. And they themselves have gotten the result that they are wanting, right? That's what people buy. And this is where vulnerability comes into place because it gives them that ability. You become, you know, a client magnet. And if you become a client magnet this way, you become a money magnet, right? Because it's authentic. You're helping people be authentic, showing your authentic self and being real, being real with people. And trust me, people love this. The one thing you want to be really careful though in when it comes to being vulnerable in your business is knowing the difference about when you're authentically sharing or when you're emotionally dumping, okay? And I've seen a lot of fairly new entrepreneurs get into this problem. And it's they grow out of it. Because again, emotional dumping is like your business is not your emotional dumping ground at all. Emotional dumping is too heavy for your client. They're coming to you for solutions. They're following you because you're providing solutions. You're providing the thing that they want. You're providing the message that they need, right? If you start emotionally dumping on them because they're already feeling emotionally burdened or uh because there's already, some burdening happening, you can really turn clients away this way, right? Um, so if it's an emotional dumping ground, what tends to happen is you kind of dump into the victim, right? The victim mindset, like poor me. And then you need your audience to support you, right? And it confuses them. Are we here to support you or are you here to support us? Like what is going on, right? People want to be supported. They're coming to you for the support. So if you're giving it a lot of emotional dumping and you're getting into that a victim mindset, then yeah, it confuses people and it confuses people like your message, right? I've watched someone, and I'm not going to say who it is, but this entrepreneur has recently started going through a divorce, and his message used to be one of power, one of inspiring, but now he's kind of been emotionally dumping on his clients and on his community. And I've been watching this thinking, ooh, he's going to struggle because he's mad. And so he's talking about his ex and saying bad things about her on social media and kind of dragging her through the mud right now. And it's really out of alignment with the message of healing that he used to bring, right? And I can only imagine, I mean, I haven't talked to him, but I can only imagine what that's doing for his business and his sales is because it creates a distrust actually in clientele. He used to have like hundreds of people commenting on his posts, and now he might have three, right? Coming to support him, coming to his rescue. But again, it's because clients get confused. Like I want the support. He's begging me for the support, so obviously he can't give it. So I'm going to go find somebody who can give me the support, right? And they feel bad for him, I'm sure, but they're not going to pay him to help them when he is begging them for help. Okay? So authentic sharing, however, is when you talk about a struggle and turn it into a power, right? So a lot of you guys have heard me talk about my husband and the struggles that we've had in our own marriage, right, with his pornography addictions. And bless my husband's heart, like he's not afraid of me sharing these things. He's actually very open. And I really, really appreciate those things about him, right? But I talk sometimes about, the realizations I've had because this has been a part of our marriage, such as the realization that I had an addiction to control. And the more I tried to control him and the things on the outside of me, the more I felt out of control. And I realized that one of the things that I needed to do was bring the control back in. That what I really wanted was to feel like I had control. But the way I was doing it wasn't working. The way I was doing it was causing me to feel even more and more crazy, more and more out of control. And so it taught me the lessons of emotional stability, emotional being in touch with your emotional emotions and being emotionally mature, right? Like it taught me those lessons. It taught me the need for boundaries, and it pushed me actually into the direction of coaching because I realized that I had tools in my belt that many other women needed, right? So something like that, like that's authentic sharing. I don't go into a lot of detail about the pain, just simply the circumstance, right? The circumstance was my husband had a porn addiction, right? And this is what it taught me. I didn't get into the whole emotional and me breaking down and things like that. Like that might be more appropriate in a book than what it is in social media, but uh in a social media post where you have to have somebody's attention in 5 seconds, 3 to 5 seconds, right? And they'll lose attention if you go way far into the emotional side of things. They don't connect on social media that way. You really have about 3 to 5 seconds to gain their attention, about 15 seconds to make your message, right? That's literally like about what it is. Um, Talking about the circumstance and then the lesson that you learned from the circumstance is more authentically sharing. Okay? You can even mention that I thought my husband's addiction was going to break me. But but what I learned instead sewed me up, right? It brought all the pieces back together. Something like that. That's a lot more of authentic sharing, but it's still vulnerable because I'm still talking about the thing that could be uncomfortable, right? And I'm not afraid of the discomfort. I'm not afraid of sharing things. So that's more of like the authentic sharing type of a thing. So you want to ask yourself questions like before you share, is this helpful? Is this something that I have healed? And is this something that is relevant to my audience? Right? And is this something that they want? Right? So for an example, uh, do they want to heal? Do they want these tools? Well, then here's the one tool that I have and how to use it, right? So make sure that it empowers your audience if you're going to be vulnerable with them instead of burden them with more stuff, right? They shouldn't feel like they have to come to your rescue ever because they're hoping that you maybe not can necessarily rescue them, but can give them the tools that they need to be able to build and facilitate their own rescue. So make sure that you turn it to purpose, right? Don't make it heavy. And again, like focus on their needs and their wants in the vulnerability. Like talk about like what you realized you needed and talk about what you realized you wanted and how you achieved it, right? Like those kinds of things people want to hear. So, um, that's the beauty of being vulnerable. This is the beauty of vulnerable marketing is it gives you the ability to empower people, show them how to meet their wants and their needs, and give them that shift or that breakthrough moment. Give them a little slight taste of an experience with you because most likely they're in that position where the vulnerability started, right? and they can connect to that, and they can connect to the story of how to get out of it. So this is why it's so important, why it's amazing, and why I highly recommend that, in your business, get into being vulnerable, get into being authentic with your audience. And again, if you guys want help, don't forget to schedule that Busting Your Money Blocks call, right? Where we'll go through your different relationships and we'll see what your subconscious is really saying about your money blocks. And we'll start busting those open. Okay? All right, my loves. Until next time, I will see you soon. Bye.
All right, Boundary Boss Babes. I'm super excited that you tuned in with me today. Make sure you tune in again next week as we chat about more Boundary Boss Babe topics. We're going to get into so many other things about how to set boundaries with your business, how to set boundaries with your relationships, so you can truly have the time, the money, and the flexibility that you are seeking. So tune in next week. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast. Let your other Boss Babe friends know about it. And also, if you've got any questions, make sure you submit them into the podcast by clicking on the Send Us a Text message at the bottom of the podcast description. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. See you later, Boss Babes.